Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be a very chill, kind of controversial video. I want to talk about books that have high ratings on Goodreads that I don't think are worth as high of a rating as they got. So if that's not your thing, feel free to skip. I did the opposite version. I will link that in the description box. I talked about books that, even though they have an average rating pretty low on Goodreads, I personally think they're still worth it. It doesn't mean that I hated these books. Some of them I did, but some of them I just don't feel like they deserve 4 point. I think the lowest we're gonna go is gonna be like 4.2 or something. So like, I personally didn't give them 5 stars. Majority of these I did not give them 4 stars. So let's just talk about them. I like this, okay? I feel like it's okay to normalize not loving books as much as everyone else. I feel like sometimes you feel the pressure to also like it, even though you didn't really. So let's do that. So we're gonna go in order of the ones that I see in my read list. So the most highest rated one at 4.61 is Crooked Kingdom. Personally, did not give it 4 or 5 stars. I did run it up to a 4, but I feel like I was being generous and felt the pressure, to be honest, because as much as I like the characters, I didn't love this. I feel like the heists were too easy. Like, the stakes are high, but I feel like never for a second I thought they weren't going to make it. I am still angry about something that happens towards the end. It's a spoiler, so I'm not going to mention it. But based off that spoiler, I have a feeling of what's going to happen now that she's announced a 3rd book is coming. That will happen in book 3, and I'm mad in advance. So like, is it petty? Probably. Do I care? Not really. But I don't think it's as good, or it wasn't as good for me as it was for everyone else. Also, I do like to mention this is the 2nd book in the Six of Crows duology. Did I mention that? But it's also book 5 in the Grishaverse, and I always like, if we're going to be petty, I'm gonna say it again. You have to read the Grisha trilogy before, at least the 1st book, because the magic system is not explained in this duology, which in my opinion was super underutilized, which was one of my biggest pet peeve in it. But everyone is always saying, oh no, you can skip it and just read the duology. You will not understand the magic system. And I don't care how many people have argued with me that, oh, I totally got, you did not. You didn't. Like, it's so not explained, which to me, I feel like more of it in the books would have been much better. But I do agree that the characters are likable, so like, you know, don't come from me. I still gave it 3 point something and rounded up to a 4, but I feel like it's 100% because I felt some pressure, because I will never put this in like a must-read fantasy, like favorite fantasy series video recommendation. I won't. Will I put this in like, oh, beginner friendly or like popular ones? Sure. But personally, this doesn't come close to being in my top 10. Even top 20. Like, forgettable to me. Characters are great, but yeah, magic system, the heist, didn't care. Okay, the next one is not technically part of the video, but I really wanted to mention it. Le Comte de Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is technically book 2. This is the French edition, but The Count of Monte Cristo. I feel like everyone has raved about it. Such a great book. And I do agree that the first 400 pages, fantastic. Such an easy 5-star epic revenge story, I agree. But nobody talks about how weird the ending is. I have some issues with things that happens at the end. Nobody talks about. But yeah, I still think it was great. But seeing it there made me want to talk about it. The next one that is definitely part of this video is The Wise Men's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the 2nd book in the Kingkiller Chronicle. This is book 2. I feel like book 2 is always going to be higher because people that didn't like book 1 will not continue. But I did. I don't regret it, but I'm not sure I would even want to read book 3 if it were to come out, because I went into the series with low expectations because people, you know, were warning other people, it's not that great, blah, blah, blah. You know, when a book becomes so popular that everyone turns on it. But I went into it low expectations, and I did enjoy book 1. I felt like it was a fun, magical school vibes. I love that. But I didn't care for the romance or female characters. But, you know, I looked past it, and then I read book 2. There's like a 10-chapter section that I wish I could erase from my memory. Like, literally. We'll not talk about spoilers in this video, so won't mention it, but awful. But even if you didn't care about that part, that affects the rest of the story. Makes it awful too. Even if you don't care, I feel like it was so choppy. In the beginning of book 1, the author, the narrator, mentions that, okay, this is going to be my life story to get to where we are at right now. and he will recount his whole life story in 3 days, and each book is a day. And then when you get to day 2, book 2, you realize, oh, I didn't go anywhere near far enough. Like, we took our time, and then we're still at the same spot in book 2. And there's just this rush. That's why it feels so choppy. It just skips ahead, and it's just not good. Just not good. And yeah, the rest that affects the story. Repulsive. Like, the main character was just repulsive to me by that point. So, not that he was ever that likable, but book 2 is awful. But yes, it's such an epic story. Everyone is so in love with the series, blah, blah, blah. The average rating is 4.55, and I gave it 2. The next one that I'm seeing is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. The average rating is 4.52, and I gave it 3. I think I gave it 3 point something. Okay, a little controversial. I have mixed feelings about this author. I loved The Martian. Loved it. Great audiobook also. You know, epic sci-fi, trying to survive in space all by himself. Great. But then he came out with Artemis, which was so painful. He tried to write a female character, which I'm glad with this one he didn't go there again, because please, never again. And it was just not working, so I was a little nervous when I went into this one. I also tried, I think it was Randomized, the short story by him, sucked. But The Egg that you can find online, you can Google it, great. So like, you know, flip-flopping, wasn't sure how I would feel about him, so I went into this one a little nervous, and I was glad, like I said, that yes, the sense of humor just works better for the male character. And I like that, once again, someone trying to survive in space. I liked the ending. I liked the friendship, keeping this vague. And I do think that it was overall interesting. My main problem with it is that I felt that compared to The Martian, because you kind of have to compare them, I felt like the story was not progressing. Like, when something would happen that he would need to fix in The Martian, you could see, again, the progression, and you just really don't get that. And I just, for that reason, really wasn't loving it as much as everyone else. I'm aware that it's the unpopular opinion, but I'm mentioning it because, again, I gave it a much lower rating than the average, and I want to normalize that if you didn't like it, I didn't either. It's okay. It's okay. The next one is Sarah J. Maas. We knew it was going to happen. A Court of Wings and Ruin has an average rating of 4.45. I should have known better. I read the first book, didn't care for it, but when I hadn't read book 2 because of the hype, and I did agree that it was a huge improvement. I felt like the friendship between the characters and just the overall story, and even the love interest, was better. I still could have done with a little less growling, but you know, it was better. I agreed. And then book 3, I thought it was the end of the trilogy. My mistake. It suffers heavily of the middle book syndrome. Like, nothing happens. Literally nothing happens. It's just like preparing for a fight, traveling, sexy scenes. Yeah. I give it 3, and that feels generous. That was in 2017, so that could explain it. It wasn't it. Another throwback, Gemina, which is book 2 after Illuminae. I ended up giving it 3, which, once again, was I pressured? Was someone coming for me? Because the average rating is 4.45, and I really didn't care for it. Frankly, if I were to reread it, I would be shocked if I gave it more than 1 or 2 stars. It's a YA sci-fi. I feel like everyone used to rave about this series, and I tried this one as an audiobook, which was a mistake. The first one I read, the physical book, definitely do that, because a lot of it is told in format like very visual, and also like interviews or like emails, I should say. And it's just not great to listen to an adult narrate the really cringy, flirty emails between 2 characters that are teenagers. I got really bad secondhand embarrassments, basically. So yeah, we'll not talk about this ever again, probably. Oh my god. I can't believe I'm about to say that. Becky Chambers? The Galaxy and the Ground Within. This is book 4 in the Wayfarer series. I just want to say that I love her to bits. She's one of my favorite authors, but I much preferred The Long Way to Small Angry Planet over everything else in that series. I still read them, and if she were to come out with more, I would read them. They feel a bit too, like, wholesome for me. Oh, I'm not sure that's the right way of saying it, but I feel like sometimes adult books that are wholesome can come off a little bit as, like, children's book for adult. I got vibes like that of this one. Like, I read it. It was fine. I enjoyed it because it is her, but yeah, if you like wholesome aliens, sci-fi, I would recommend her in general with this series. But yeah, I much preferred book one. I'm being very fair if I even include Becky Chambers in here. The Man Who Died Twice, which is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club. The average rating is 4.41 and I gave it 3 point something. Once again, it's a series that is wholesome murder mysteries where you're following older characters. They're like in their 70s, 80s, and they're solving murders. And I love the vibes, I love the idea, but I just wasn't 100% invested as much as I thought I would be. So it's not bad. It's definitely a me thing, but yeah, I was a little disappointed, but I love the characters. Another one that's going to be slightly controversial. This is going to hurt. I believe this was made into a TV show now, but I thought it was fine. But I had no hard feelings or no strong positive feelings for it. I gave it 3 stars. The average is also 4.41. I felt so meh about the whole thing. It's a true story. Main character, the author, I should say, wrote about his experience becoming a doctor in, I think it's the UK. And it was fine. It was fine. I thought it felt a bit too short. And I feel like sometimes authors are not authors. Like, you wrote a book, but you're not necessarily the best with words. And in nonfiction about following their life story, you kind of have to be invested in them. And like I said, I just had no feelings. And then we go into the historical fiction section, which I really want to love historical fiction, but I don't seem to love them as much as, again, the masses on Goodreads. I feel like a lot of the really popular ones, I just didn't feel as emotionally invested, which is, if you want me to care, especially if you're going to make me read some World War II, you need to make me care. The first one is not that, actually. The Great Alone, let's mention it quickly, by Kristen Anna, 4.39. This one is in Alaska, family that lives there, domestic violence. I really like the first half, but it just goes weird towards the end. I thought I would throw it out there. So yes, like the beginning, didn't care for the ending. Is it worth reading more by her? Because I do know I have The Nightingale by the same author, and she just came out, I think it was Four Winds, which I've been seeing, but I'm hesitant to pick them up, so let me know. But the one I really wanted to talk about is The Book Thief. I cannot be the only one that thought that they were going to love it and just didn't. I feel like in theory, you're following the story through the eyes of death. Yeah, I want to love this and books, but again, I felt nothing. I felt nothing, which makes you feel like you're depressed. Maybe I am. Maybe I am. But I just, yeah, I was not invested. I believe I listened to that one as an audiobook, actually. So maybe that was part of the issue, but probably not. So I wanted to mention it. The average is 4.39 and I gave it 3, maybe 3 point something. I will never put this on a list of books, must read kind of books. I might give it a shout out if I talk about a book where death is a character or something, because that's cool. But yes, personally, please tell me you feel the same. Because unmemorable. Ooh, the next one, the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. I really liked the first book. It was a novella, 100 pages. You're following the story through the eyes of Murderbot, a half robot, half kind of humanoid character, and they're great. They do not want to be a robot. They don't want to serve people. They just want to watch TV shows. So you get cozy vibes-ish, which worked really well for me, the first book, the humor, and then I just never cared again. And I got to book 4, which is Exit Strategy. This one is a full-length novel, average 4.39, and I gave it 3 stars. And I barely finished it. I'm not continuing the series. This was it for me. So it's unfortunate because, once again, super popular, but personally just wasn't my thing. Book 1, love though. Ooh, another one that makes me feel like a monster. I feel like this is therapy session, okay? I'm just talking about all my deepest, darkest secrets, and you're here to not judge me, hopefully. Wonder. The average is 4.38. I read it in 2016, okay, in my defense. That was when I started Booktube, literally in August. So really 2 months into this new journey, and not even 2 months, the second month, I thought I was going to love this, but I didn't realize middle grade is not for me, especially, again, the wholesome ones. The main character is disfigured, decides to go to school, and you imagine the story, you know, being bullied and then everyone is loving and accepting it. It meh, made me feel like a monster. Frankly, I felt worse for sister because she was being, you know, neglected. What's the name for the child that is neglected because the other one has more needs? Glass child? Is that what it is in English? Yeah, I felt worse for her, which again made me feel bad because who thinks like that? Me, apparently. So yeah, I didn't care for it. But again, 100% because it's middle grade and now I know better. I don't read a ton of them, but I'm putting it out there. If you've seen it around or if you've read it and you also feel like a monster, me too. I'm trying to not include super recent books because like I just read Happy Place by Emily Henry and it has an average of 4.35, but I feel like the people that read a book when it just came out are the people that already love the author, so the average should be higher. I give it 3.5, and the average, like I said, 4.35, but I was disappointed. I wanted to love the vibes. I mean, it's bright pink, of course, but what I liked about her other books is that the main characters were emotionally mature and they were communicating, and you get the opposite in here. So it just pissed me off because that's what I don't want to read. But I still like the characters, the banter, and like the ending I was happy with. It just, why would you be with someone for years and years and years and not communicate? It's just dumb. It's dumb. It feels like cheating to include YA, but quickly, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which the average is 4.35. I read it because of the hype. I personally, once again, felt like the main character is putting herself in, like she's investigating a murder and she's putting herself in like super dangerous situation. It's like, if you talk to an adult, I'm at that age now. I'm like, just talk to an adult, please. I know they don't listen to you, but like, you're investigating a murder, going outside to spy on people, like at night. You're gonna get murdered too. It's, I just can't suspend my disbelief. Like, I'm officially just too old for these books. I just can't. Ooh, The First Love Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. Book 2 is the one I'm seeing at 4.33. I gave it 3. I felt like this was also like middle book syndrome a little bit. I didn't care for the sex scenes. Apparently, some of you told me that they're meant to be this cringy. I don't know. Maybe it's true, but either way, I just wanted to pour bleach into my eyes. It was just really, really painful. And I feel like this one was worse. Book 1, I was able to like enjoy the story and just not look at every details. And I feel like in book 2, it was just more obvious the female characters and just the overall story, which kind of just meh for me. There's one good scene in there. No spoilers. But yeah, I read the third one and I also kind of just feel meh about the story now, the trilogy. The next one we have is The Lies of Lamora. Again, really popular adult fantasy series. I like the characters. The writing felt very slow. Anybody else? But I just wasn't as invested in this. Like, the characters are great. The world is great. But I found the story kind of boring. And like I said, very, very slow because of the writing style. So I just really didn't care about the heist. In this one, the average is 4.3 and I gave it 3 point something. It was fine. I read book 2. Didn't care for it, and I'm giving up on the author, the series. Just, it's not for me. Two more. The next one, also a really popular series, Leviathan Wakes, the Expanse series. I was joking around that you could tell this was written by a man because of the sense of humor, and then someone told me it's actually written by 2 men, and I'm like, okay. Listen, you can tell me that the characters are meant to be awful, but ultimately at one point the author did write this. I'm not saying that if you write an evil character, you're evil. Like, that is really not what I'm saying. We're going to blame that on the French. But listen to this quote, okay? The moon itself, Phoebe, filled the frame, turning slowly to show all sides like a prostitute at a cheap brothel. Do you know what I mean? Like, this isn't evil character being evil. This is just weird. A lot of the sense of humor in the book felt like cop talk, and it was just crossing the line for me, and I didn't think it was interesting. So it's like, you're making me read this horrible stuff and then not being good. You know, sometimes you're like, oh, the book is sexist. I don't think the author meant it to be sexist, which is, again, a different thing. And then you're boring. But sometimes it's good and you're like, okay, I'll look past it. But like, this one I couldn't. I never continued. I know a lot of people said that this TV show is better. And I believe you. I just have never felt the need to check it out because I'm traumatized by book one. Will not continue. Did I get rid of them already? Yes. They've been unhauled a while ago, so they're gone. And then another one at 4.29, I gave it 2 stars, and that was generous. The Tattooist of Auschwitz. What was that? Like, this is exactly what I mean by I've read too many World War II books, and if you're going to make me read a bad one, I'm now just resenting it. This, I believe, was written as a screenplay, so it excuses some of the issues I have with it. The writing is just terrible. Like, it's a skeleton of a story, which again, screenplay makes sense. But I feel like the main character is able to like walk around everywhere he wants in the caves, which makes no fucking sense. So yeah, I had so many issues with this. I feel like this is literally disrespectful. Like, I know it's inspired by someone's story, but like it's just straight up feels like you're crossing a line. I believe it was like rejected by like some of the foundations. I don't remember the whole background, but essentially it was offensive to a lot of people. And I agree. It feels like a 12-year-old wrote that really badly, and that's... No, I gave it 2 stars, and again, generously, because 4.29. This is why people don't trust Goodreads. Because like this does not deserve 4.29. Was it ever made into a movie? I just will not be watching that. That's no. I feel like I should end this here because this is like the most offensive one. The most flagrant, like this was really popular. I hated it. But let me find one more because I want to. Okay, 4.28. It's still really close. And then there were none. I want to include this because it's going to be controversial. And I want to, once again, normalize not loving something super, super popular. I thought I was going to love this, and I just didn't. And I don't know if it's because it's my first book by her in a really long time. I feel like I grew up reading her books, but in French, so completely different. Not really. I give it 3 stars, and the average is, like I said, 4.28, but I just wasn't that invested, and I didn't really care for it that much. With that said, I've been asked to give it a second shot, and I am all for it. I bought some of her other books, like the first book, I think it was in the Hercule Poirot series, and I will be reading this hopefully this summer. So we will know once and for all if she's just not for me or if it was just that one book that didn't work for me. I will attempt to like solve the murder mystery throughout the vlog. I think that could be fun. You can just see me overthink the whole thing and just be wrong, and you can try to solve it too, you know? It's all in one. So I have 1 or 2 books by her. I think I have book 1 and 3 in that series. So I might try those, do a vlog. That could be fun. But yes, I wanted to mention that I didn't like it. So if you didn't either, feel free to comment so we can just support each other. So these are all the books that Goodreads thought were worth more than 4.28 average rating that I didn't care for. I thought it would be fun to do these videos once in a while, talk about the books that you'll basically never see me talk about ever again. Because most of these are not like awful, they're just completely forgettable, and it's okay. You can't love everything you read. I mean, I wish I could, but I don't, and I wanted you to feel that it's okay. Again, it's easy to forget that there is a middle ground sometimes, you know? You're not loving the books, you're not hating them, so feel free to leave your own list in the comment section. It could be interesting to see how your personal taste is different from Goodreads. Thumbs up, subscribe. I will be putting more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out, including the other version I mentioned, and I will be seeing you in an upcoming video very soon. Bye.